in some ways, this is one of the most important slides or pieces of advice that I have. I think you really need to know yourself well before you go on the academic job market. You have to ask yourself some really tough questions. Sorry about that with the mic. I think I'm deafening you probably. You need to know how flexible you're willing to be. What matters the most to you in terms of an academic position? You need to be able to survive. So if you know that you have a partner and you can only go somewhere where there are going to be jobs for your partner, whether those positions are within academia or outside, that's going to limit the places to which you apply. And you need to have that conversation with your partner before you start. I think that institutions are a lot more sensitive to that issue now than they once were, but it's not universal. Many of the regions in the U.S. have set up what are called higher education recruitment consortia, I think there's one or two coming in Ontario and Quebec. There aren't any in the West yet. What these recruitment consortia do is they enable you to go on a website, look at all of the positions in a given geographic area at all of the post-secondary institutions, colleges and universities. Some of them even are more advanced in terms of the tools they offer. You can say, okay, one of us is in high energy physics and the other one of us is in Victorian English literature. Which places have jobs in both? Or can you find me a job in each? In this geographic area. Some universities offer quite a bit of assistance with spouse-partner employment. Beware. If you're promised something, make sure it's in writing. I know that I've been on the end of trying to negotiate with a candidate around this, and they'll say, well, University X promised me that as soon as we get there, they'll get a position for my spouse. And I'm saying, you know what? I can't promise you a tenure stream position for your spouse, but I can promise that we can offer a one-year position and we know someone's retiring. But all I can really promise you is the one-year position, but I'm definite about that. You have to think very carefully about whether you want to take the risk of this promise of, yeah, maybe something, yes, we'll definitely give you a tenure stream position, but we really can't put anything in writing right now from another university. There's also the question of when you reveal that you have a partner who has to be accommodated. And I've looked at this one from both sides of the fence. I've run spouse-partner employment programs at 2 universities now. I think that as a candidate, does this apply to anybody here? Just wink if it does. Okay, it does. So I'll continue. People are afraid to reveal this too early on in the process. Now, if you're visiting a department where they've gone out of their way to have junior faculty talk to you about how they've been accommodated, I think it's really safe to raise this early in the process. But you have to decide because it's your risk, not mine. On the other hand, if it's a department where none of that has happened, I can see why you'd be a bit reluctant. But I get deans phoning me to complain that they've had a fantastic experience with a candidate, and all of a sudden at the nth hour, after everything's been negotiated, the candidate mentions they have a spouse who has to be accommodated. It sets the department up for, sets you up for some really sour experiences for the department, with the department if you leave it too late. It also doesn't leave them enough time to pull together some sort of spousal appointment. I can tell you that on average, it takes me about a month when I'm negotiating with different units. Sometimes I've got 3 or 4 units that are all part of creating one spousal appointment. Because even though your partner may only be teaching in, let's say in sociology, the way I might pull together a 2-year limited term appointment in sociology is by moving courses around in 3 other units. Everybody's going to owe somebody a favor, and the provost is going to come in with some money. That takes time. If I don't know about that till 2 weeks before you have to make a decision on whether or not you're going to accept the university's offer, I'm not going to be able to create anything. In terms of where you want to go, a lot of people haven't thought about, or certainly if I was giving this talk 10 years ago, everybody would have said, what do you mean think about where I'm going to go? There's one opening in my field in North America. That's where I'm going to apply. I think you have to think now that there are some more openings than one in many of your fields by the looks of it. Can I really live in a remote center? Or can I really live in a small town? Can I really live in a big city? The answer is maybe. Go ahead and apply for the job. The answer is I've never wanted to live there. I know I hate that kind of environment. I grew up there and I've been running away ever since. Do not apply. Because I think it's very frustrating for the search committee if you've applied just to get practice with a job interview. And academia is a very small place. Word gets around. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. If you're ABD, should you be on the job market? I think that your supervisor is probably a better judge of that than I am. Get advice from those in your discipline. But if you choose to go on the job market when you're ABD, and there's some good reasons for doing it, make sure that you're very close to finishing, or that you're accepting an offer from a university that's going to give you time off from teaching in your first year so that you can complete your dissertation. Because it's really difficult to be doing that at the same time as you're planning several new courses. The years from PhD issue. This is one of the reasons why I say it sometimes makes sense to go on the job market when you're ABD. In the training that I and other people have been doing with search committees over the last decade, we've been trying to get them to look at who the person is and where they're going, not how many years it took them to get their PhD or how long it's been since they got their PhD. That there are many factors in people's personal lives that delay the length of time it takes them to get their PhD, or that cause them to take time off before they're looking for their first academic position, or causes them to take sessional positions before they look for a permanent position. I would say that I still hear from departments that are using years from PhD as a criteria in ways that I personally am not comfortable with. So I think I'd be amiss if I didn't tell you that that actually can happen still, even today. And that might be a reason why you might want to go on the job market a little earlier. Keep detailed records. Make sure that you keep a record of every place that you applied. Keep the job ad from every place to which you applied, because you're going to need it later if you're shortlisted. And you'll never be sorry you kept those records. The more organized you are at the beginning of this process, the easier it's going to be. You're not going to be flipping through little pieces of paper that you lost one of at a point where you're at a critical juncture in negotiating with someone who's made you an offer. I only want to say a couple of things quickly about applications. I think there have been a few other talks, career talks about that sort of thing. But when I've asked faculty in the humanities what their advice would be, they've said, tailor the letter to the individual institution at which you're applying. Do not send something that looks even vaguely like a form letter. It should be crisp and focused, 2 pages maximum. Give them a real sense of why your research matters. And also, in this environment right now, what turns you on about teaching? If it's a research-intensive university, obviously you want to put your focus on research first in your cover letter. But I think you still want to mention teaching, because everybody's glad to see a new professor who actually gets turned on by teaching first-year undergrads, and the reason they do, in part, is because they want those students to be interested in continuing on in the discipline. One of the most important things you need to do with your cover letter and your CV is take a look at how it scans. If a search committee has 100 CVs, they're going to look at the ones they've been alerted to, so the stars they know are going to be applying because other people have told them they're applying, and they're going to scan everybody else's very quickly. If yours doesn't scan well, quickly, it'll be off to the pile on the side very quickly. Now, I told you to make a friend here, and one reason was so you could practice your job talks and interview questions, but the other reason is because it's good to have another person look at your CV. It's also good to have a personal friend who sort of held your hand through graduate school look at it, because people tend to be too modest. Now, you don't want to market yourself as someone that you're not, but make sure that all of the things that you've done that could be relevant, that could excite a search committee, are on there. And you need somebody other than yourself taking a second look at that.